Alphonse had arranged rooms, 4 narrow ones near the headquarters, intended for refugees. Rudeus stowed his luggage and changed out of his travel clothes, then went back to the headquarters bulletin board because there was nowhere else to be and Eris was still in her room. Paul's notice was still pinned there: search the central continent or the northern region. Written when Rudeus was about 10. He was nearly 13 now. Time really had passed. He found the section for Buena Village and scanned the columns. Names he knew from childhood, most were on both lists, crossed from missing to confirmed dead. Laws was there. Paul had mentioned his death, but not the details. And then, just below, Sylphie. Missing, with a line through her name. His heart drummed. He checked the dead column. She wasn't there. He started at the top and went to the bottom. Not there. There's a line drawn through this name, but it's not in the list of the dead. That's one of the people who was confirmed to be a survivor. Something inside his chest dropped with a thud, which was the exact physical sensation of enormous relief. He asked if contact information was registered. 20 minutes later, it was not. So she'd survived, but either wasn't settled yet or had been confirmed by a third party. Either way, she was alive. He worried about her hair. Same general color as the Superd, though a slightly different shade. There were cruel people out there. She might be out there somewhere, crying over a comment about her hair. But Paul had mentioned she could use healing magic without incantations. She was strong. She could take care of herself. He prayed she hadn't become a slave. He crossed off Lilia and Aisha from the missing list himself. His own name already had a line through it. Among Paul's family, only Zenith remained, name intact and unanswered. He filed that away as a question for the man-god. When he'd finished, Eris still hadn't come out. He went back to their rooms and sat on the hard mattress of his minimally furnished quarters. His body sank. He was more exhausted than he'd thought he was. Mental exhaustion, or something like it, except heavier, the specific weight of receiving a shock you'd intellectually prepared for, but still physically couldn't process. He remembered Saros taking him along on a survey of the region's crops, asking about Eris. Philip with that awful smile proposing they take over the Boreas household together. Hilda begging him to marry Eris and become family. The vast manor, the reception hall where they danced. The tower, the library, all of it just gone. A knock at the door interrupted his second exhaled sigh. It was Eris. She looked composed. That was almost more alarming than tears would have been. Well, I figured this was how things would end up, she said, as if discussing weather. She had prepared herself for this possibility years ago, apparently. She sat down across from him and asked what he meant by after this, as if her family being entirely wiped out was simply another agenda item. But her hands were in her lap, and she was looking directly at him, and she was wearing the black one-piece she'd bought in Millersham and never touched since, the one that matched her red hair, that her breasts pushed against because she was not wearing a bra. Her hair was slightly damp, and she smelled of soap and faintly of perfume. Rudeus, I'm alone now. And besides that, I recently turned 15. He was in the process of having several thoughts simultaneously, including one about not remembering her birthday, and one about what 15 specifically meant in the context of a promise they had made some time ago, and one about the current status of his composure, which was deteriorating. Wait, when was your birthday? The day Regid told me I was an adult. Of course it was. Is there anything you want? He asked weakly. A family. Not something he could give her. He could not bring people back from the dead. He opened his mouth to say so. Rudeus, become my family. You mean like brother and sister? I don't care what you call it. So basically, what I'm saying is, let's sleep together. He took a breath. He thought about this carefully. He was perfectly rational right now. He was the soul of reason. I'm feeling kind of lonely today, he said carefully, so I might end up doing something perverted to you. You can do it today. It's not going to be just a little bit if I do it. I remember, and I'm saying that you can have your way with me. Internal, his little man was having a standing ovation. External, he was trying to reason through the situation like an adult. He had done this before, in Eroge. The protagonist hesitates at the critical moment, and everyone in the audience calls him an idiot. He'd called those protagonists cowards. He was now in that exact position and understood, belatedly, that it was considerably harder from the inside. He thought about Eris, who might be being self-destructive. He thought about regret. He thought about Pillarman. He thought about the fact that he'd almost died very recently and had had no guarantee he wouldn't die again before his 15th birthday, which was 2 years away. Jeez. Eris sat herself on his lap, sideways, arms around his neck. Tanned breasts, beautiful face, close enough to smell her hair. She noticed immediately that something was pressing against her thigh and went very red. What the heck is that? It's because you're so cute. She ground her thighs against it. His breathing shortened. She confirmed he was turned on. She confirmed he didn't dislike her. She confirmed he was worried about her father and grandfather. She confirmed he'd been looking at her a specific way the entire conversation. She confirmed he was still going to refuse. Yeah, he said. Hey, Rudeus. She took a breath. My mother taught me this, but since it's embarrassing and I'm forbidden from using it anymore, I'm only going to say it once. She leaned in. Rudeus, I want to be your little kitty. Mew. The last threads of reason, gone. That night, Eris and Rudeus ascended the steps to adulthood together. This is handled in the text with a certain diplomatic discretion. He says he forgot about the complicated matters weighing on them, could only think about being with her, was fairly sure he loved her, wanted 3 children, probably more than that, was elated. He never once wondered what Eris might be thinking. He was wrong not to wonder. Eris, my name is Eris Boreas Greyrat, and I loved Rudeus. I want to explain when I started to realize it, his 10th birthday. My mother shook me awake, dressed me in a red nightgown, and with a very serious expression told me to go to Rudeus's bed and surrender my body to him. I wasn't prepared for this. As he touched me, a thought appeared uninvited. Maybe he doesn't actually love me. Maybe I'm just a reward given to him by my father. When I realized I wasn't okay with that, I ran. Started back toward my room. Panicked. Had I just thrown away my last chance? My mother said no one but Rudeus would have me, and she was right. I'd met other noble children. None of them had anything like his grit. So I went back. And when he saw me, he threw himself on the floor like a frog and apologized, saying he was the one in the wrong. I looked down at him and told him to wait 5 more years. That was when I started to fall in love with him. Then, we were transported to the demon continent, and there was a superd standing there, and I thought I was being eaten. I'd been so selfish. This was punishment. The person who came to save me wasn't my grandfather or Ghislaine. It was Rudeus, younger than me, visibly terrified, calming me down anyway. That required more courage than I could have managed. I fell in love again. The journey that followed. I worked desperately because I was afraid he'd leave me behind. I worried that I was holding the party back and he'd come to hate me. I requested extra training from Rudeus. He knocked me down repeatedly and each time asked, "Do you understand?" And I understood. Rationality, the discipline behind expert movement, watched and mimicked until it was mine. A year in, I managed to defeat Rudeus once. I let myself feel proud about it for approximately 3 days before Rudeus, who had just received a demon eye, beat me in a sparring match without magic. I cried at the beach the next morning. Rudeus said, "Don't worry about it. You have talent." I believed them less than I believed what I saw in front of me. What changed it? Militian. Fighting the strange assassins there and realizing I'd overwhelmed them without thinking about it. I'd started to grow without noticing. Then Paul pushed Rudeus away, and Rudeus spiraled into depression, and I saw for the first time that he was 2 years younger than me and had been carrying everything this whole time. Had spent his 10th birthday away from family, had traveled the demon continent hauling me and my problems along. I intended to cut Paul down for it. Rudeus stopped me. He was right, but I still couldn't accept it. Then the central continent, and Zenobia, and then Orsted. During the Orsted encounter, Rudeus and I were both terrified of what stood in front of us. Only Rudeus was completely unaffected. He even managed to land an attack. I couldn't follow the magic he used. I'd thought death was irrelevant to us. Rudeus was strong, Rudeus was with us, we were safe. Then the dragon god put his hand through Rudeus's chest, and if the masked girl hadn't said something, that would have been it. I stayed beside him after that, because I was terrified that if I didn't, he would disappear. When Rudeus had left, he told me I had the potential to become far stronger than him. He reminded me that I'd survived an attack from someone who bore the name of a god. I understood. We came home, and nothing was left. Father, grandfather, mother, dead. Ghislaine and Alphonse were there, but they felt formal and distant. All I had was Rudeus. I was impatient. His tutoring contract had ended. His duty was discharged. He would leave to search for the rest of his family, and he would leave me behind. I used my body to keep him here. I worried throughout that maybe he didn't actually want me. He'd never peeked at me in the bath. Even on the ship when he could have, he'd restrained himself. Maybe I lacked the femininity he wanted. But he was turned on, and seeing him like that turned me on too. Afterward, partway through, he grew feeble and small, as if he might break. And I realized, again, that he was smaller than me, younger. And I had spent the entire night using my anxiety about losing my family as an excuse to press myself onto him. He'd spent the voyage to the Millis continent healing my seasickness until he was exhausted, which probably cost him badly later that night against Geese. I loved Rudeus, but I wasn't fit to be with him. I would only be a burden. We'd become family, but we couldn't be husband and wife yet. Not while the balance was this wrong. The best thing I could do for him was to leave and get strong enough to actually stand beside him. I would go to the Sword Sanctum. Ghislaine and Rudeus had both said I had talent. I would trust their words and become a precise, powerful swordswoman, one who wasn't a burden, one who was befitting of him. Then, how to tell him I was leaving without him talking me out of it? He was an excellent speaker and a determined warrior. I could not leave a note that contained tracking information. I would leave something short. He would understand. Rudeus woke up in a state of optimism entirely disconnected from reality. He addressed, internally, both virgins and non-virgins in the manner of someone who had just experienced a profound upgrade in status. He reflected on the differences between reality and prior theoretical models. He thought about his girlfriend and their upcoming pillow talk and possibly afternoon plans. Eris wasn't there. She was an early riser. He wasn't worried. He found his pants. His underwear was missing. Eris's panties were beside the bed. He pocketed them on autopilot and yawned. Then he noticed the floor. Red hair. Strands of it, everywhere. He picked one up. It was Eris's scent. In front of him, a piece of paper. The two of us aren't well balanced right now. I'm setting off. Pozza. 3 secondy. 1 second. 2. He was out the door. Her room. No luggage. Headquarters. Alphonse. Hey, Mr. Alphonse, where's Eris? She set off on a trip with Ghislaine. Where? I was told to keep that a secret from you. He stood there. Hi. He didn't get it. Huh? Why did she break up with him? She abandoned him. She left him behind. She'd asked for a family and then cut her own hair and walked out while he was asleep. Family? What? He didn't get it. He reviewed the night in the only way available to him, which was as a sequence of events he'd been a participant in. The problem with this review was that he kept arriving at the same flattering conclusion. He'd been present, he'd been attentive, he'd been, as far as he could tell, reasonably not terrible at the whole thing. He had decades of theoretical preparation from 2 lifetimes of reading about human relationships and considerably more applied research into the relevant literature than was strictly healthy. He had believed, sincerely, and right up until approximately this moment, that this background constituted a form of maturity. The alternative theory, which was only now emerging, was that it constituted absolutely nothing, because Eris was physically larger than him, had been in 3 real fights for every one of his, had fought the dragon god and had the bruises to prove it, and had made every decision in the relevant interaction from start to finish, while he had been performing something he'd retrospectively identified as thoughtful hesitation, but which, reviewed now with the note in his hand, appeared to have been called being 13. He had 35 years of combined life experience. Eris was 15. She had somehow been the adult in this situation. He filed this away under lessons learned and did not open that file again for a considerable time. A week of doing nothing. Alphonse came by occasionally to suggest he find something useful to do, and Rudeus eventually did. Earth magic for a defensive wall around the camp, levee construction where the embankment had eroded. Small, developing villages were springing up just outside the camp, and people were beginning to cultivate wheat. The restoration was proceeding. Eris had officially chosen death as a legal designation. The name Eris Boreas Greyrat was no more. Just Eris, status unknown, announcement postponed by a few years, pending whatever political calculations Darius was making. Rudeus told Alphonse it was a shame she'd gotten away. Alphonse said regardless, he had to work toward the region's recovery. His face showed approximately nothing. Rudeus thought carefully about why Eris had left. He reviewed the night in every detail. What he remembered was mostly the lovemaking. When he tried to identify what he'd done wrong, the only conclusion he could reach was she'd gotten sick of him. The trip had been full of failures. They'd gotten there, but Rudeus had done the heavy lifting. Eris had grown enormously. He hadn't kept pace. She'd fulfilled the promise early and said goodbye because she was tired of following someone who kept failing around her. He had no idea why she'd acted like there was a deeper meaning to it. He thought about this for about a day, and then remembered he had another mission entirely. Ah, that's right, I need to search for Zenith. And that was how he set off for the northern part of the central continent. Meanwhile, on the demon continent, Roxy Magurdia, Water King magician and the most earnest person in any room she entered, arrived in Krasma with Talhand and Elinalise. Krasma was a thriving coastal town ruled by a demon king with excellent taste in food and drink, which meant it was basically paradise for Talhand and moderately tolerable for Roxy, who as a general rule disliked spicy demon food, but found the sea folks' sweet alcohol revelatory. Sweet, seashore fragrance, spread of indescribable flavor across the mouth, a slight saltiness on the aftertaste that made you want to snack. Roxy was drinking. "You're in a good mood today." "You heard it, eh?" Talhand noted, watching her go at it. She was, in fact, in a pleasant mood. She had been studying under Talhand and adventuring alongside Elinalise for long enough to have opinions about this. Krasma was one of the better stops. The evening escalated, as evenings with Talhand tended to. A giant demon was recruited as drinking partner. Then Talhand challenged him with his arms wrapped around an entire cask. Then Roxy found herself sitting next to a girl with purple hair, goat horns, leather hot pants, and a tube top, who had appeared beside her at some unknown point and was eating the food Elinalise had left behind. Roxy was too drunk to mind. The girl turned out to be a formidable drinker, introduced herself eventually. "The one to defeat you will be I, the Demon Emperor of Demon Eyes, Kishirika Kishirisu." 40 drinks later, Talhand lost consciousness off the top of a table. The pub passed donations around for a fourth time. Roxy ended up judging the contest. She had no idea how or what she was judging, but she accepted the role, sipped her own drink, and counted. The last thing she saw before her own consciousness departed was Kishirika climbing up on the counter and dancing naked. Morning. Roxy healed her own hangover using a spell specifically tailored for the purpose because she had been in this situation before. The pub looked like there had been a brawl. Talhand was unconscious on the floor with only the whites of his eyes showing, which at least meant he was not dead. Kishirika was standing in front of an angry barkeep, explaining with diminishing conviction that she'd thought what she paid already would be enough to cover the destruction. Roxy produced Talhand's coin purse. He was unconscious. He wasn't using it. Paid 6 emerald ore coins, successfully ended the conversation, and introduced herself to Kishirika properly. "Pardon the late introduction. I'm Roxy, of the Migard tribe." "Ooh, Roxy? I know you. You're Rudeus' master. You know Rudy? I happened to run into him in Windport. That boy was quite entertaining." Roxy decided not to ask what specifically Rudeus had said about her, because she was too scared to know. Kishirika, feeling generous in the way of people who have just been bailed out of debt, offered a reward. Roxy's heart leaped at the word. The great emperor of the demon world was famous for bestowing demon eyes. It was precisely that ability which had given her the military strength to launch the great human demon war, and reportedly, there was not a person in the world she couldn't find with them. Roxy asked, without hesitating, could Kishirika locate Rudeus and his family? She used her one reward to ask for that. "Oh-ho, how admirable of you, to use your one and only wish for the sake of another." She found, Rudeus, Northern Central Continent, light clothing, running, training, probably. Paul in Militian with Lilia and their 2 daughters. Lilia and Aisha were safe then. Zenith, Greyrat Continent, maze city of Rapan. Something about Zenith's situation Kishirika couldn't quite see even with her eye. The labyrinth's concentrated mana made it difficult to focus. But alive. They were all alive. As you'd expect of the Greyrat family, their luck is strong, Roxy murmured. That afternoon, the group convened. Objectives confirmed, journey functionally over. They'd found who they were looking for. Now, logistics. Roxy needed to go to Militian to report to Paul. Elinalise and Talhand preferred not to see Paul's face, for reasons related to the enormous fight when he left that they declined to detail. Talhand agreed with visible reluctance to accompany Roxy. Elinalise would make her own way to the Northern Central Continent. Except, Rudeus would be up there searching, alone, not knowing that his family had been located. That wasn't right. And that's where I come in. Done. 2 figures burst through the door. The first was a well-built demon with obsidian skin and 6 arms, the top pair folded over his chest, the middle pair making finger guns at Roxy. Purple waist-length hair. The second, perched on his shoulder, was Kishirika. Roxy recognized the demon, Badagadi, immortal demon king of the Byagoya region, younger brother of the immortal demon king Atofa. A venerated figure, or so Roxy had been taught. He had apparently spent last night with Elinalise, who had apparently spent this morning with him, who he apparently called his fiancée, which Kishirika appeared to find normal because, as was explained, physical completion of their engagement was currently impossible. Roxy's comprehension of this situation broke down several stages before the end. Roxy, I owe a debt to Rudeus. If he has lost his way, then I will lend him my strength. Although she'll be borrowing my strength to do it. The plan. Roxy and Talhand head to Militian. Elinalise, Badagadi and Kishirika take a seafolk ship. Badagadi had connections through the demon king Bagura Hagura to the Northern Central Continent to find Rudeus. Except Kishirika couldn't actually leave the demon continent, a curse of some kind. So Roxy and Talhand to Militian, Elinalise and Badagadi to find Rudeus. Kishirika stays. Before departing, Elinalise offered Roxy a piece of advice. If there was someone she really liked, she should go hard for them. Love grows afterward. She'd given Zenith the same advice. Her teaching, she maintained, was flawless. If I find such a person, I will go hard for them, Roxy agreed. Of course. I'll be sure to tell Rudeus how miserable you were at night, rustling in your bedsheets as you went at it alone. Wait, why do you know about that? And please don't say that. I wasn't thinking about Rudy when I did it. Of course, Roxy then realized. Elinalise would find Rudeus within about a year. Rudeus would be 13 or 14. She asked, as casually as she possibly could, whether Elinalise might be interested in him. Elinalise looked genuinely disgusted. I don't have the faintest desire to become Paul's daughter-in-law. Roxy exhaled. Oh, all right. The parties went their separate ways. Elinalise and Badagadi boarded a seafolk ship, ancient construction, pulled by sea creatures. Kishirika saw them off from the dock. Ha ha ha! Well then, let's see each other again. Badi, when you want to see me again, return to the demon continent. Stay in good health as well, my betrothed. Ahaha. Roxy's journey continued. Extra, in a carriage rolling through the rice paddies of the Sanakya kingdom, Aisha was monologuing about the kennel master. The wheels on this road were not quiet. Every rut in the packed earth surface produced a creak from the axle, regular and patient, the sound of a vehicle that had been moving for long enough to have opinions about the terrain. Outside, rice paddies green and flat in every direction, irrigation channels catching the afternoon light, a landscape utterly indifferent to anything that might be happening inside the carriage. The world was conducting itself as normal. Big Brother Kennel Master really was dreamy, Aisha said. If I'm ever going to get married, it definitely has to be to someone like that. Lilia, who was sitting across from her wearing glasses, and the expression of someone who had complex feelings about this development, said, Yes, of course. Aisha had, at some point, put together the full picture. She'd known who the Kennel Master was from fairly early on and had been testing him. If he'd tried to take her with him while keeping up the deception, that would have told her something. Instead, He had explained the panties with actual sincerity and given her his forehead protector, and she had promoted her feelings for him accordingly, from annoying alleged pervert sibling to something considerably more complicated. Lilia stood from her seat while the carriage was still moving, which gave Aisha a moment of genuine alarm. Her mother typically stood up like this right before hitting her. Instead, Lilia stroked her head. Aisha went still. It wasn't a frequent gesture. Lilia pulled her small body close. Aisha, Mr. Kennel Master or Master Rudeus, whoever you choose is fine with me. When that day came, give everything you have to serve him, she said. And as she said it, she swore to herself that the reason she was raising Aisha would not be for Rudeus and not for herself. It would be for Aisha. Aisha held her excuse together for approximately 3 seconds before abandoning it. I knew, of course, that the Kennel Master is my brother, so I just kind of wanted to try teasing you, just a little. She had been embraced by her mother, maybe never before. The realization arrived without warning, a wave of happiness she hadn't been expecting, her first time crying from joy. She didn't understand why the tears refused to stop, but she wrapped her arms around her mother and cried into her shoulder regardless. Ginger, the knight who had been watching the two of them, turned to look at the rice paddies rippling in the wind.